The lady from the church asked me to pray for her husband's soul. I said, "Of course. When did he die?" And she answered, "Tomorrow." No child should die alone. That's why I decided to let my son invite some friends over. Someone started having a coughing fit at my workplace. The problem is that I work alone in a morgue. Never knock on your door from the inside at dawn. The devil can knock on the outside. These macabre stories and others that can't be told on the channel, you'll see in the Cursed ebook. The link is in the comments. Buy it now. It was a dark and stormy night when Mark's car sputtered to a halt on the desolate highway. The engine coughed its last breath, leaving him stranded. The rain lashed against the windshield, and the wind howled as if warning him of something sinister. His only hope was the dimly lit gas station in the distance. As Mark pulled up to the station, he noticed a sign above the entrance. It was weathered and barely readable, but the words "Read the rules before you stop" were clear. A shiver ran down his spine. Why would a gas station need such a peculiar sign? He stepped out of his car, the raindrops soaking through his jacket. The gas station looked abandoned, with flickering neon lights and a faded sign that said "Welcome." There was an eerie stillness in the air. Mark hesitated, but he needed gas and a place to wait out the storm. Inside, the station was dimly lit and filled with dusty shelves. At the counter, a tattered notebook lay open. It was covered in stains and age spots, but the instructions were legible. "Read the rules before you proceed," the first rule said. It seemed odd, but necessary. Mark read the rules carefully. The first rule instructed him to check the restroom before using it. A chill ran through him as he thought about the implications. What could be so important about the restroom? He hoped it was just an old, quirky practice. The second rule was even stranger. It warned against talking to the attendant if they appeared suddenly. Mark looked around. The station was empty. It was probably just a safety precaution, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Rule 3 advised him to avoid eye contact with anyone who might appear outside. Mark glanced through the grimy windows and saw only darkness and rain. He felt a sense of unease, but shrugged it off. After all, what harm could there be in following a few odd rules? He moved to the restroom, finding it surprisingly clean for a place that looked so run down. Mark hesitated, but eventually used it. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. When he finished, he took a deep breath and headed back to the main area. As he approached the counter, he noticed the attendant had appeared. The man looked as though he hadn't aged a day in decades. His eyes were cold and calculating, and he seemed to be observing Mark with an unnerving intensity. Remembering the rules, Mark avoided making eye contact. He focused on the gas pump, trying to ignore the man's presence. The attendant didn't speak, which only added to the tension. Mark couldn't help but feel that something terrible was about to happen. Rule 4 instructed him to leave immediately after filling up. Mark hurriedly pumped gas, his hands trembling. The attendant remained silent, but Mark felt the man's gaze piercing through him. He tried to ignore it, hoping he could leave without incident. As Mark finished and prepared to drive away, he noticed the attendant stepping outside. His figure was shrouded in the shadows, and Mark felt a wave of dread. He quickly got into his car and started the engine. The storm was intensifying, making it harder to see. Just as he was about to pull out, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A figure, barely visible in the rain, was standing by the side of the road. It was an eerie, shadowy shape, almost blending with the darkness. Mark remembered Rule 5. Never stop for anyone on the road. The figure began to move towards him, but Mark sped away, the tires screeching on the wet pavement. His heart raced, and he could hardly see through the torrential rain. The shape seemed to follow him, its presence hauntingly persistent. He glanced at the rearview mirror and saw the shadow fading into the distance. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the road ahead seemed more treacherous than ever. Mark's sense of foreboding grew stronger. Rule 6 flashed in his mind. Never look back once you've left. Mark focused on the road, but a nagging curiosity tugged at him. What was that thing by the roadside? Was it real or just a figment of his imagination? Hours passed, and the storm showed no sign of abating. Mark's fatigue set in, and he struggled to keep his eyes open. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a dark, ominous tunnel with no end in sight. He desperately hoped to see signs of civilization soon. Suddenly, the car's headlights caught something unusual. A signpost read "Gas Station -10 miles." Mark blinked, disbelieving his eyes. How could this be? He had already left that station behind, or so he thought. His heart pounded as he considered the possibility of being trapped in some twisted loop. The rain beat against the windshield, drowning out his thoughts. Rule 7 advised him to never return to the gas station once he left. What if the rules were right, driven by both fear and curiosity? Mark decided to investigate. He turned the car around and drove back towards the gas station. The storm seemed to intensify, almost as if nature itself was conspiring against him. He could barely see through the downpour. As he approached the station once more, it appeared even more decrepit than before. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows, and the sign above the entrance seemed to leer at him. Mark's hands shook as he parked the car and got out. Inside, the atmosphere was heavier, more oppressive. The attendant was still there, his expression unchanged. Mark's sense of dread was palpable. He felt as though he was being pulled into something dark and malevolent. Rule 8 warned of a final, unspoken rule. Once you enter the gas station, you may never leave. Mark's mind raced as he realized the gravity of his situation. The storm outside roared with fury, as if it were alive, feeding off his fear. He tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The attendant's gaze was piercing, almost hypnotic. Mark's panic escalated as he realized he was trapped. The rules were not just peculiar, they were deadly. Desperate, he turned to confront the attendant. The man's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "Welcome back," the attendant said, his voice echoing with a chilling finality. Mark's blood ran cold as he understood that escape was impossible. The storm outside seemed to reflect the turmoil within. The once familiar gas station now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on him. The rules had bound him to this place, and there was no turning back. Mark's attempts to break free were futile. Each rule he had disregarded seemed to tighten its grip on him. The darkness around him deepened, and the attendant's presence became a looming shadow, watching his every move. As the hours passed, the storm outside slowly subsided, but the station remained trapped in a perpetual gloom. Mark's hope dwindled, and he could only wait for whatever fate awaited him. The rules had been clear. This was a place of eternal confinement. The final rule echoed in his mind. Once you've read the rules, there's no going back. Mark realized the gravity of his mistake too late. The gas station had claimed him, its curse sealing him within its malevolent grasp. The next traveler who stops at the gas station will find the tattered notebook on the counter with a new rule added. Never read the rules, they will ensnare you. The cycle continues as the station waits for its next victim, ever hungry for new souls to trap within its shadowy confines. Until next time, thank you.